Testament lesson in the lectionary is chapter 15 of Luke 1 through 10, which includes the parables of the sheep and of the lost coin. But I discovered in studying it that that's just the setup for the point. Indeed, the point is at the end of those parables is at the end of the prodigal son, which probably might better be called the prodigal of the older son, the parable of the older son, but because the older son is the point of Jesus' answer to the problem at the beginning. You will listen for sinners, grumblers, and rejoicers, and why that happens. Luke chapter 15, then, reading all the way through to verse 32. Now, all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him, Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Which of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or, what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating. No one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quick, bring on a robe, the best one, put it on him. feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now, his elder son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him set back safe and sound." And then he, the older son, became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you. I have never disobeyed your command. And yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." This is the word of the Lord. In my first church, last years I was there, I think it was the 8th year, I went to visit an older man, a deacon, long-term deacon in the church, never served on the session board, but had always been a deacon. And he wanted to talk to me about his funeral. I didn't think he was dying. It turns out I did do his funeral within a year, but he wanted me to talk about that funeral. And as we were talking, I found a way, I don't remember how I did it, to ask, how do you feel about, are you ready to meet God? And his answer was profound. He said, "I've tried to please God all my life. I hope that I've been good enough to deserve heaven." This man was a good man. He loved the people of God. He devoted his life to obedience. But he had no assurance of salvation. And after all of this life as a Presbyterian, going to church, occasionally actually hearing the gospel, he never quite heard it. He didn't know that he was loved by God unconditionally. He had no personal relationship to God in Jesus Christ. He had spent his life trying to be worthy. And I had to start from scratch and tell him the gospel again. That, no, he was not worthy. That none of us are, and that's why Jesus died for him. That God loves him unconditionally, and we prayed together. And I hope and I pray and I believe that he finally got the point. He was sincere. I think that these Pharisees and scribes, the grumblers in this story, the first grumblers, are sincere, have been sincere, have dedicated their whole life to do everything possible to avoid sin, to be righteous, and to obey God, and to please God. They have committed themselves to this task. They are so concerned about not pleasing God that they've set a fence around the possibility, adding all kinds of extra laws. They consider dealing with sin as a big deal. And so, it seems that they have disdain for those who don't take it seriously enough. And they believe that they are right in complaining about Jesus associating with people who do not take God seriously. So he tells them a parable. One about sheep. They're not shepherds, but surely they can identify with sheep because it's a culture that's based in sheep. Frankly, sheep are part of every family. You'd have your children, and then if you had a sign on the back of your car, you'd have 3 or 4 sheep down there. They had dog, sheep, sheep, sheep. Is that important to you? And so they understand sheep. They understand that the sheep's important, so you go looking for the lost one. And they understand lost coins. They know that a woman who's been saving and loses one of her coins, a tenth of her income, or a tenth of her savings, is going to go looking for it, and that's reason for rejoicing. He's saying, and then he tells them how much more so God rejoices to whatever finding what God has lost. And it makes sense. And because he's talking about them, the shepherd and the woman, they can understand it. And he's trying to communicate them in a theoretical way, at least, why God might be grateful for someone who is lost being found, for a sinner repenting. Concern about sinners. Why God cares about sinners. Now, underneath it all, I think, is a subliminal or an in-between-the-lines message. And Jesus' parables are so wonderful because so much is in between the lines. Between the lines is, you guys care more about animals and pocket change than you care about people. True, isn't it? But they don't get it quite yet. So he goes on and he gets into a deeper family relationship story. Firstborn is then interrupted at his young age by an interloper, a younger boy, who gets attention too. He then becomes highly competitive, the firstborn, to do everything to please the father, to steal the attention back from the boy, who then can't ever please father or his brother, and tries to get attention by early on, by learning how to do things wrong, discovers that gets him attention, and so you have this pattern, classic pattern there, and as he begins to tell the story, he doesn't have to explain that backdrop because it's so common in every family. And the younger brother doesn't deserve, hasn't done anything, does not deserve his father's love, affection, attention. Never has. He's an ingrate. He's ungrateful. He doesn't deserve, and from the older brother's point of view, there's that frustrating indulgence that the father gives this younger son that is a thorn in his side all the way through his life. The younger son finally gives up. I'm not wanted here. I don't belong here. My daddy doesn't love me. My brother doesn't love me. And he demands his inheritance early, knowing probably that the father, who has always been indulgent, will continue to do so, and divides the inheritance long before his death, his demise, between the two sons. The older son continues to be faithful and respect the father. The younger son flaunts everything, stomps off by himself, and because he's never learned to do anything but be self-centered, he squanders it and he finds himself destitute. In his destitution, he comes to himself, the story says, and he rehearses his little speech. I have sinned against heaven, God, and you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Parentheses, really never was, but I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. So, treat me like one of your hired hands. He sets off, But while he is still far off, his father sees him. Why? Because his father is looking for him to come. Sees him far off. Remember the hymn, at the portals, he's waiting and watching. Come home, come home. Father runs out to him, puts his arm around, kisses him. The son begins his speech. I have sinned against heaven before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Before he can get the words, treat me as one of your hired hands out, the father interrupts. Bring the robe. Put a ring on his fingers. Kill the fatted calf. Celebrate. And now we get to the point. The elder son is the deserving one. He is the grumbler. He is the Pharisees and the scribes. And he has taken this whole story to get to this place where he can try to communicate to the scribes and Pharisees who are complaining about associating with sinners how God looks at them, what the nature of their relationship to God really is. All this business about loving your children. My children, when they were pretty young, but old enough to conspire together, which they did frequently, got together and talked and came to me with a dilemma. It's like the rabbis. Tell us, Father, which of us do you love more? Sean and Amy. And I explained, as I'm sure you've explained, kids, I love you both with all my heart, and each of you equally. Love is not like that. You don't divide it up. I love you as an equal, which solves the theoretical problem, but the practical problem is different. So there's this competition, sibling rivalry between Sean and Amy, Sean the older, Amy the younger, on who gets to sit in the driver's seat, the passenger seat in the van. They have two seats. I bought a van so they can each have their seat, so I wouldn't have to put up with, he touched me, he touched me. So they've got these van, they have these two seats, but they're constantly running to the car. The first one who shouts, shotgun, gets to sit up front. And then one day, they couldn't solve, they both shouted shotgun at the same time, and they were squabbling. And I said, Amy, get up front, Sean, get in the back. And it takes a few minutes, and Sean gathers the courage and he says, Daddy, why does Amy get to sit up front? And so I answered, she's younger than you. She's a girl. She's better looking. And I like her more. Now, to be fair to me, I handed out this strategic abuse, or whatever, mental abuse, fairly evenly between both of them. And the purpose, of course, was to kind of knock them out of the cycle or whatever. You know, so they're both just pondering that shocking statement. Amy's smiling because I love her more and like her more, whatever, say love. All right. Competition. And I meant to give that illustration earlier, but then I realized I'd forgotten it and had to throw it back in. Now I got a problem. So here we have the Pharisees and the scribes saying, why do the sinners get to sit up there with you? Why do they get to eat with you? Why are you spending time with them? And he gives an answer in a parable. And here we get to the elder son. Now, what's wrong about the elder son? He's devoted his whole life to being worthy of his father's favor. He's been completely committed, always obedient, never disobedient, and believes, and arguably rightly, that his father ought to praise him and ought to give him preference because he deserves it. But then in this situation, he resents his own father. He resents his own father for forgiving and loving his brother. And what do we discover then about his relationship to his father and his brother? First of all, he doesn't love his brother. It's not clear that he loves his Father. It is clear that he has never recognized truly the nature of his Father's love for him. He has never seen his Father for who he really is. He has never appreciated the magnanimous, unconditional love of his Father, which he has only tacitly resented in all the generosity and grace that his Father has given to the undeserving Son. So now that this happens, and that son of yours, not my brother, but that son of yours, is treated this way, the older brother resents his father's unconditional love. That is to say, the older brother rejects his own father for who he really is, has never known his father for who he really is, does not appreciate or begin to understand the Father's love for him as being unconditional. He has, without realizing it all his life, been divorced from his father. The younger son goes to a far country, but the far country that the older brother is in is far, farther away. It is the emotional and spiritual distance of infinity, because he doesn't even begin to know the greatness and the beauty and the love of the Father, and the love that he has been privileged to have from birth from the Father. He doesn't understand the very nature of his own Father as unconditional love. This, of course, is the problem of the very dedicated religious people that are complaining and grumbling about forgiveness of sinners and associating with the lost or seeking the lost. This is a very, very sad thing. Now, as usual, Jesus doesn't make the application. It has already made itself. And he lets them make the conclusion that is obvious. This brother of yours, meaning prostitutes, sinners, tax collectors, this brother and sister of yours was dead, that has come back to life, was lost and been found. Why shouldn't you rejoice? You rejoice for animals when you find them. You rejoice for lost change. Why don't you rejoice for this brother and sister of yours? So this is the way I interpret it and the way I look at it. I am very grateful. Whatever quality of sinner I am, however unworthy or worthy I am, that the God who is love loves me and loves you unconditionally. Therefore, love one another as I have loved. Hallelujah.